I insane? Yes, but it's spooky season. Hi, I'm Akatsuki, and I might be a little bit insane, but spooky season, and you know I love spooky, just in general. So, no one ever wants to celebrate Halloween with me. I know, right? And this year, I was especially depressed on my birthday, so I had a crazy idea. Let's celebrate Halloween extra hard this year and make all the costumes. It might be a bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, I have not one but five costumes planned out, and let's see how many we can do until Halloween. I also have a bunch of little props and stuff, because I have an idea. Not gonna tell you what it is yet, but I have an idea. Yes, I may have been a bit too overconfident in choosing the amount of costumes, but a lot of them are pretty simple, and I have some stuff already done from other stuff that I can use for this, so, you know. Yeah, I chose 5 different costumes. Bit too much, I know. But I'm crazy, so sue me. For my first costume, I decided to start with something fun. So I started with my Mimikyu. My little crazy idea for a Necromancer Mimikyu. I started working on a couple months ago. I had a whole mood board and only a very basic design to go off of, but I did have a very clear idea of the feel I wanted for this, and that's all I really needed. I only gave myself 2 weeks to finish this, so I did have to rush and cut some corners here and there, but it actually ended up pretty good, so I guess it's okay. It is meant to be a challenge after all. So we had to cut some corners and change some details from the original design. But first, let me show you the original design. And as you can see here, the basic idea of it was we need a hood to have the ears and obscure the face, because, you know, Mimikyu hides its face because people tend to go a little when they see it. Let's see. Some sort of cloak, which is this thing I'm wearing, because we needed somewhere to attach our little monster hands to, because I want to still be able to use my actual hands. Next we have the actual monster hands. They were always meant to be separate from my hands so I can use them, and everything else was just likeness at this point, literally. Later I decided the corset needed to be open, as if trying desperately to hold back the darkness inside. It was meant to look more ripped open than it does, but I didn't have time to do all that, so it is what it is. I also needed to properly close the sides for the garment to have some kind of support. And that was pretty much it for the corset. Well, I never really decided on the skirt until I actually made it. So I made so many different designs of it, and none of them actually look like the finished piece much, other than maybe the second one, because I just didn't really know what to do with it, honestly. I had so many ideas, and I just didn't have time to do most of them, so I went with the simplest one. I made it nice and baggy, like the little costume that Mimikyu wears. Seemed appropriate, and it actually looks fine. Then the cloak went through a jacket phase, then a shirt, and it became a cloak again for a second there, but then it went back to just being a jacket. I know, I'm crazy. It just seemed like the most comfortable, easy to put on, take off whenever the you want. And yeah, I needed it to have actual sleeves so I can stick these in here and hide my actual hands. It lost a face, but it kept the ears and gained a mask. Basically, it went through phases, but this is how it ended. We have fluffy monster hands. Enough said there. Oh, here's the skirt. I was gonna use acrylics, but then it wasn't really necessary because the tulle was enough volume for it. So I didn't. And I didn't really have enough time to make one anyway, so it sorted itself out. There was gonna be a kind of a Sally type skirt with like little stitched up bits, but I didn't really have time for that, so just a baggy little skirt is, I guess, more like Mimikyu. Anyway, in the concepts I gave a mask to both of them since Mimikyu does like to hide and people don't really like to see its face, so it makes sense. Oh, and finally the stick, because you know, I needed a tail, and a Necromancer needs a magic stick. That's just how it is. So I have a magic stick. I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of bloody and stuff. I think the light's messing it up, but yeah. Now with the costume idea broken down to its basics, we can start constructing the actual costume. So I started with an old pattern from a very basic corset. I just cut all the pieces without the seam allowance to make it even tighter, because we want it to be open along the front and back middle bits, I don't know. Then we used some acrylic paint to dye the pieces before we attached the interfacing. We just used some very diluted acrylics for this, because we just barely wanted to see the yellow, just making it look old. We used an iron-on interfacing. For the skirt we dyed it first, then cut, because it was a lot of fabric. I just cut around an old skirt of mine to make this, just made it longer, then cut up the ends to look ripped up. Then we put all the pieces of the corset together, making sure all the right sides are together and the pieces match with our lining. We also have to mark the side that's gonna be sewn and the side that's gonna be open on the side parts. Then I took some strips of fabric and pieces of string. That's gonna be how I'm gonna close the corset. Because I don't really have eyelets at the moment. And it's a lot easier to put them in place this way. So we need a lot of these, two for each of the openings in the corset, as you see. This is what they look like, and we're gonna stick them inside of the seams. Making sure they're gonna face the outside. We pin them in place, making sure they're gonna be inside the seam mostly, only the string sticking out, and we sew around it. This is the process for the front and back bits, because they're gonna have little stringies on both sides. The sides have a slightly different process. You have to find the side that's gonna be, well, a hole and stick in the little stringy bits, then attach it to the other side piece, which may or may not already have its stringy bits. Mine already does. And then we do the same for the lining. And just attach them. The lining's not gonna need anything special. It's just gonna be sewn together. And you're gonna have one very large side piece. Because it's the front and the back together. Just repeat the process for the other one. I just remembered that I need to close the middle too. So I'm just gonna stick them in. Like so. And sew them in place. I'm just too tired to do it the proper way. And so for the middle parts, we stick in the one we remembered to make, pin it in place, sew it in place, and then we have to do the slow and very annoying process of putting in the little bits of string one by one on the other side. Don't forget to remove the excess fabric, so it's easier to flip all the pieces around when you're done sewing them. for the skirt we just sew the sides together, making sure the right sides are together as usual. We leave the middle open so it's easier to attach it to the corset, which we then have to basically string together so we can see where everything needs to attach on the mannequin, because it's easier if we mark all the places where it needs to attach first before we pin them together. I used some zip ties for boning because they're really cheap and they work pretty well. Just cut them about a centimeter or two shorter than the actual corset so it doesn't force the seams. Also, when sticking it into the channels, the little seams I'm making right now, right along all the sides, all the openings, we may need to burn some of the tips so they don't rip the fabric. When making the channels, you should make them a couple of millimeters larger than the actual zip ties so they go in a little easier. Then we pin the skirt where we marked and we sew it together. You can remove all the string, it's a lot easier if you do, but I'm too lazy to do that. And then we can finally close the middle bit, not all the way up because we need to get inside of it somehow. So we need it to be open until about the hips, and we're gonna close it some other way. I haven't quite decided at this point. Then we basically just bought some tulle skirts because it was cheaper than buying the actual tulle and making them. We bought 2 of them, they have 3 layers each, and we sew them together using my legs to keep it stretched out so that I can still fit inside it once I'm done doing this. We added that to the mannequin. As you can see, it's already looking a lot fuller, like it's about to burst. Then we made the, I guess, bottom layer, which is just a very light and see-through fabric that I wrapped up around an old lining skirt I had lying around somewhere, very haphazardly. One in here, one in there, it's really just sewn on somehow. And then we have to distress the little dress with some acrylic paint. We used some slightly orange, some slightly yellow to make it look old and dirty and like it's been through a lot. I used some water to dilute the paints into the fabric a bit and then added some brown to all the seams and stuff just to make them stand out a bit more. Now we start with the monster hands. I started by making some gloves. I also made just a pocket version because I wasn't really sure if the full glove would really work with the puffy fingers. So yeah, I made both versions and just tried them both out. Then I take my fluffy fabric, what's left of my Undertaker hat, and make some very large hands. And I guess arms. Does have a bit of an arm. We check the size to make sure one fits inside the other. Then we make the little holes for our hands to go into. We sew them closed and we fill them, well, the fingers. Because we need to still move it a bit at least. I tried the gloves, but I couldn't really use them very well. It was really hard to put them on. So I just went with the pocket version, where I just stick my full hand in there and move it as one. As you can see, the pockets stick out a little bit because it's just more comfortable and easier to put on that way. We repeat the process for the jacket. We start by dyeing it with a very diluted yellow acrylic paint. After it dries, we take the pieces, sew them together. We made a little hood straight on my head, basically. I just pinned where it needed to fold in and just cut the fabric afterwards. Then I made some little ears. I stuffed them. I painted the little tips and I sewed a little bit of the, I don't know if it's the left or right, one of the ears to be folded down. I actually stitched that a little bit so it stays like that. I stitched the little monster hands the same way, just a couple of stitches to keep it in there. I attached the ears to the hood, just all the way around them, all the way around the bottom, and then distressed it the same way I did with the dress. First with some yellows and oranges, a little bit of red because it just kind of got on there, I don't know how, and then brown and black to make it look dirty. For the mask, I just used some very thick paper, I guess. I traced around an old mask I have. Then I glued them together so the paper mask would keep the shape of the other one while I'm working on it. I applied wood glue, white glue, and a lot of cotton on top of it to give it texture. Then applied the glue again to make it look kind of furry and fleshy. Then I dyed it yellow, gave it the little rosy cheeks and dark eyes. I actually blacked out the eyes with the same fabric I used for the bottom layer, and then we just gave it a nice little painting with some very nice bloody details, some brown and black around the eyes, and then a shiny varnish. For the stick, we started with a PVC pipe because we can bend the cardboard tube in a pleasing way. And then we wrapped the double-sided tape around it to help us attach the paper we're gonna use as texture. We glued them both together with some hot glue, and basically I used the same wood glue to wrap up paper around it, like we did with the mask and the cotton. Then we applied the glue again and painted it black, then a very dark brown. We applied some greenish brown, and finally some red spots, because it's a Necromancer stick, it needs some bloody bits. We applied a shiny varnish, set it. I added on a couple of extra details afterwards. But to see the full costume, you're just gonna have to wait for the big Halloween reveal with everything on it. I tried it with a couple of wigs to see which one would look better, because I never really decided that. And yeah, that's all I have for now. Like and subscribe to see the rest of my crazy costume ideas. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.